Hi everyone, so welcome back, and today's video is how I built our DIY patio step that leads into our conservatory, and it actually cost £62 but should have cost £350 from a local tradesman. So keep on watching if you want to see how I did it, but I've also got a really cool giveaway, so stay tuned for that as well. So the first thing I did was a dry lay, and luckily I found that 2 breeze blocks put together was about the same width of one of my patio slabs. And the idea was to layer it with 1.5 paving slabs with the half at the back, but after sending a picture of this to my father-in-law, he recommended the breeze blocks be completely reversed. That way a half slab wouldn't finish on a join, and it'd be structurally stronger. The other thing I was really lucky with was where I'd already laid my patio out, and it was almost symmetrical to the door. And I'd rather have that as opposed to having the slabs off and not matching the rest of them. And also by laying them out, I knew that I needed half a slab exactly, so I worked on making my cuts for that first. So I measured and marked where the halfway point was, but I also drew them on the top and the sides as well. And another very handy tip that my father-in-law suggested was to clamp a straight piece of wood to it, that way I could use it as a guide or a template for my angle grinder and make sure I got it straight. Now I will leave a link to the things I'm using below, and then I went over it with my Bosch angle grinder, and this was using a universal disc cutter, but next time I'll probably get a diamond blade one because this was wearing out very quickly. And I found the thinner the blade, the worse it cut. But I went all the way around it, and I was told to make sure I went over the sides as well, otherwise it wouldn't have worked. But also notice I wore protection for this as well, so I used a head mask, goggles and a respirator because this was a dry cutting angle grinder, and I did it outside. And this method worked a treat, and once I'd gone over it I used a club hammer and a flathead chisel. Correct me if I've named that tool wrong, and it came away nicely. I wasn't too worried about the cut edge being rough because that was going towards the wall. So now I've got all my cuts out of the way, we're now on a new day and I'm mixing the mortar to get ready to lay the breeze blocks. Now I'd seen quite a lot of videos talking about foundations, digging up the ground, putting hardcore there, sand, whacking it, or even concrete footings. And the reason I'm not showing you that because I know that this patio is solid because we'd already done preparation for this when we laid our patio in the summer. And this time, instead of using sand and cement, I thought it'd be much quicker using pre-mixed mortar. And it's slightly dearer, but it saved me a lot of time, and I particularly like this idea if you're totally new to this. And all I did was just chuck a half a bag at a time in a wheelbarrow, added water and mixed it with my shovel. So once I'd got a porridge-like consistency, I didn't want it too dry or too wet, I placed a full bed of mortar on my first slab and left about an inch gap on the side because I'd be rendering it later and having a slab on top. And I also placed mortar at the back of the brick so it would stick to the wall. Now you could use a plumb line for this, but because it was against a house and I knew that my patio was all square to the house as well, I used my builder square. Now it's not the cheapest thing, but you've probably seen me now use it on so many projects, and because of its size it's so helpful and just generally gives me more confidence that I'm doing it right. And I'd also use a spirit level and a mallet just to make sure I got it in a level position. So I made sure I took my time on this, and once I'd got that one in place it just allowed me to follow on from that and lay my next one. And again, using a spirit level, it allowed me to make sure both of them were at the same height. And note, I also made sure there was a slight slope so rain would just drip off because I don't want it going towards the house. Oh, and I also had to make sure that I wasn't going to be covering my brick air vent that you can see in front of me and the damp proof course, which is just above that. And as I went along, I also made sure that I filled any gaps between the bricks with more mortar. So far I think it's going all right. I'm not stressing about it. It's all pre-mixed. I'm already at halfway point and I don't think I'm an hour in yet. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting this done. And continued that exact same method until I'd filled all 4 paving slabs. And now it was time for my last row, and I placed another bed of mortar down and laid another row of breeze blocks, but these ones were sideways, and again conveniently the same width of one of my paving slabs. But something that I was a little bit nervous about was allowing for mortar in between the bricks. So by the time I got to the last one, I found that it stuck out almost an inch, and I thought over an inch was probably too much to render, particularly for someone who's never done it before anyway. So I thought it would be easier just shimmying along the last two breeze blocks that were against the wall and just cram in more mortar between them. I'm not saying it's the right method to do, but I just thought it was better to do it now before everything dries, and scraped any excess off. And because I was a bit worried about staining my existing patio slabs, I just went over it with a sponge and some water just to wash it away. So before I started laying the slabs on top, I realised that my plastering trowel was much wider than the height of the breeze block, so I thought I really need to crack on with this now. And originally I wasn't sure how much sanded cement I'd need for rendering, but when I saw rendering as an option on this bag of premixed mortar, I just thought perfect, so I used it for almost every part of this step. So I just went over it as much as I could to make it as smooth as possible. But if you've got any tips, then feel free to comment below. And now we're on to almost the final part, and that is dry laying the slabs. So I laid them out exactly where I wanted them. There was a little bit of overhang on the front and the sides. I thought it would look wrong being flush, but because I had to move along some of the breeze blocks earlier, I didn't want to fall into that trap again. So once I got them laid in the position I wanted and made sure they were all square and lined up, I left them there and only removed one at a time for when I needed to lay them with mortar. And notice it's so easy to accidentally touch or kick the rendering that I'd done, but I've got a trick for that later. So then, as I showed you in my last DIY video, I was now pointing the slabs to give it more stability. So I'll leave a link to that video below and exactly where to watch it, but this is a 4-part sand, 1-part cement mixture. And using a trowel, I just swept the mixture into the gaps, going side to side and cramming it in. And then once I'd reached the top, I'd just go over it with the pointy end of my trowel to remove the excess. And then once all the gaps were filled in, I just dusted off any excess as well with an old rag. But going back to the rendering, it wasn't perfect, so I left it to go off a bit before I could polish it with a trowel. And because we're in winter, I found it was fine to do this by the next morning, but I wanted to use this polyurethane float, but it was too wide. Apparently it gives a nice texture as well. So I had to go over it with a small metal trowel, and I was surprised how I was able to even get rid of any foot marks and glove marks and any grooves underneath. And I do this in circular motions or go up and down from the floor, and then left that to completely go off. So it's really cool to say I've got another job ticked off my list. But we've actually since just cleaned the whole patio area. Obviously I've got to do the rest of that next. But FFX got in touch with me to offer me an X amount of money to spend on some tools, and we actually went way over budget and treated ourselves to a pressure washer because there's loads of jobs to do. But I only agreed to this on the basis that they could offer you a giveaway prize. And luckily they've said yes. So I'm going to leave a blog link below with a review of the K4 Karcher pressure washer. There'll be a competition in that if you want to win £60 of tools of your own. So I'm very excited just to be able to offer you something, and the fact that I've reached 10,000 subscribers. So I never thought it was possible. I never thought anybody would be particularly interested, to be honest. But yeah, anyway, if you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you over at my blog, and I'll probably finish the competition middle of March to give plenty of people a chance, and it's only available to those in the UK. Anyway, thanks for watching and good luck. Bye!